Welcome to the PantheonPlus Rewind. Well, friends, it is that time once again when we gather up at our weekly camp spot, we call out assists, and we loot some mobs because it's rewind time. Yep, episode 106 of our little podcast covering Pantheon Rise of the Fallen's development and community is ready to go, and we've got an epic weapon of a podcast for you today. On this week's show, we're backstabbing the June newsletter, we're mezzing a discussion about server loyalty, and we're logging in to a new lore tale with the Ogre Direlord, Araka Mel. So type /roll in chat, and good luck with your RNG on that rare drop. Now join me, Theric, and my massively multiplayer co-host, Desrin, for this week's Rewind. How's that for an intro, Des? Pretty on point?
That was incredible. Holy moly.
It's you know what it is? It's the EverQuest. I've been playing EverQuest for Tuesday nights, and it's got me mindset in the EverQuest mindset again. So all the lingo's coming back to me. It's like learning an old language, and like all these buried memories coming to the surface. So
that's awesome. It definitely makes for good content. I can't believe I said that.
Well, it does. You know, it's EverQuest is evergreen, as it were. So, you know what? I had a realization though, Desmond, and I'm going to run this by because in honor of VR updating their race and class matrix a couple weeks ago now, I figured we needed to do something with the adventuring party to signify this moment. And I had this epiphany, right? It came to me in a flash. And here's the plan. Here's what I'm thinking. If anyone wants to join the adventuring party today and agrees to be like one of the newly created race class combos that VR put out, they get to stay in the party not just for the next week, not just for the week after that, but for 3 more weeks after this. So it's like a month of getting to be in the adventure party if you pick one of these new race class combos. So let me tell people what they are so they have the opportunity to make their decision on this. So here's the new ones. Elf Cleric, Elf Paladin, our favorite, the Halfling Direlord, aka the Shire Lord, the Darkmer Shaman, Darkmer Paladin, the Archive Summoner, or Scar Ranger. Scar Ranger. So here's the deal. If you pick one of those, if you join the adventure party today, and we'll get to a minute how you do that, and pick one of those race class combos, you get to be in the party for the whole month, not just on the one donation from the super chat or whatever, however you do it. So what do you think, Does that work for you?
What a deal. I think this is a little interesting from promoting these very specific race class combos. I know which one I'm hoping we see.
Okay. Do you want to say it, or do you want to just want to wait and see if it happens?
I'll wait and see, and I will match whoever picks this race and class combo for sure.
Oh, nice! Jumping in with your own race and class. I like it. Okay, well, let's introduce our adventuring party of this week, of course. They're here to escort us through episode 106. We got Ziplocs on the Darkmer Rogue. We got Sparrow on the Elf Ranger. Bounty Code on the Human Wizard. Screech on the Scar Bard. Wiki Woo on the Human Enchanter. Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric. Horsasaurus on the Human Warrior. Byproducts on the Halfling Rogue, or possibly a Direling, as they decided they may be called during the last week's show. Bitcrunch on the Ashen Elf Shaman, Muujin on the Scar Beardlord, RedbeardFlynn on the Darkmer Necromancer, Anton on the Darkmer Summoner, and a new party member, so welcome to Dave Bowers on the Human Ranger. And now we have a couple more of that. Now this is a little controversial. We got Deimos on the Darkmer Cleric, who said he wants more Scar Ranger talk. And then we've got Random Rob, who joined the adventure party simply to counteract Deimos, saying he wants less Scar Ranger talk. So I'm pretty sure I know where I sit. I'm Team Rob here, and the question becomes, who do we follow? So, Desmond, what's your vote on this?
Oh, I don't know if I can vote.
Are you gonna abstain?
I'm gonna abstain for the sake of not sharing my own biases.
Well, here, I'll tell you what. If the Scar Ranger comes up, we won't not talk about it. How about that?
That sounds good.
Gotcha. Okay, so if you can't tell, like we have tons of fun with the adventure party every week. And like I said, if you want to join the party, the way to do that is to drop a super chat donation, or you can check out our Patreon page and get a permanent seat in the party. But again, like I said, if you drop a super chat donation today during the show, in one of those classes I mentioned, you'll be in the party for the next month. So it's just fun, and we want to thank you guys, everyone, for being a part of the show and participating and having fun with us. Whether you support the show through that or just by being here and hanging out with us, it's always appreciated no matter what. So having said all that, Des, I think the quest mob has spawned and it's time to get to some killing. So can I get a ready check?
R's in chat, everyone.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes. All right, nice. So on June 16th, VR dropped their monthly newsletter giving us the latest on the game's present and its future. And that future is happening now because they let off with the news everyone wants to hear, and that's the state of their in-house networking solution named Vinyl. They said it's due to be completed next week. So that means if you're here today and we're looking at a week from now, we're looking at June 24th as a hard date for completion. And, we know VR doesn't give out these dates, but so that means, this seems pretty promising to me. I feel like, I do need to point out that it's almost exactly 3 months from the date that they said they were really going heads down on this, putting everything else aside to work on this. And they speculated this is kind of how long it would take. So, I feel like I want to give a little credit where credit's due in terms of, VR's ability to look at the task and the resources they have. And I feel like they made an accurate assessment. And I mean, it's not testing and tested and working flawlessly yet. It's, we haven't heard that from them, but at least from a production standpoint, I feel like this one kind of goes into the win column. I don't know. Do you agree, Des?
I mean, yes, mostly yes, but also a little no, because I mean, yes, they did officially announce, they're starting that heads down that, full throwing Kyle in the ring integration phase in, I believe it was the March newsletter officially, right? And
yeah, it was in March.
And so like, in that sense, yeah, totally on track. Pretty solid. But remember that this was expected to start like fall last year or something like that. As far as just word of mouth, kind of the devs speaking about it, not like a solid thing like they put in the newsletter. So it's like I don't want to split hairs too much because it's great that we're pretty much like right on here. But I'm sure we'll see plenty of comments and, feedback about this still being something that was like delayed in the first place, in a sense. Yeah. But it's all shuffling priorities anyway. So like, I give this as a win for them.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know. You never, want to pin them down and try and say that this is exactly, when they said they were, but I did look back at those in the newsletters and they did say, okay, everything else is putting on pause while we integrate the networking solution into the game. To me, that was the window that we were given. And I feel like that was pretty on point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, if you haven't been following Pantheon's development as closely as we have, and let's be honest, like nobody in the right mind actually does, because we're just obsessed. This is a big deal, and it means actually a lot of things. It means a lot of things can now get done on the production side. In the VR newsletter, they did identify some of those, and I'll just read these off as like bullet points. The first one being seamless loading between zones. They said NPC pathfinding adjustments, localized weather, cross-zone communication and group persistence, custom zone border shapes, dynamic entity spawning system, which they put in brackets. They said pets, ads, and event-driven spawns. And then lastly, on the roadmap, of course, the Ranger, Druid, and Summoner classes were all dependent on this as well. So, there's a lot going on there. Some of this we knew about. There's a couple of things that I think are maybe some new information, maybe some different language being used for something that we may have heard about before. I don't know. Personally, I would expect we're going to get some demonstrations coming up of these in the next coming months in dev streams and newsletters. I'd love to see VR take a bit of a victory lap maybe, or just like a flex, and sort of show off what their networking solution allows them to do now, really show why it's been so important and what makes it so crucial to the game as the, the final product that we all expect to see. So vinyl's in place. What do you expect to see now? If you had like a top 5 list or something, like what are you looking for here?
Well, okay, but before I give my list, because I could think of a few things I'd really like to see, but there is like kind of one like other thing that I really wanted to touch on that I'm already starting to see, and that's folks are seeing these kind of additional things that we just listed above as like, oh, this is just the new HDRP now, or like, oh, this is the new vinyl integration, as in it's another wall of things that need to get done. Because I think a lot of people were probably assuming that vinyl just like came with everything, everything related to networking. So I just want to kind of address that a bit of an elephant in the room, because that is probably how a lot of people are going to perceive this. And I think VR has focused a lot on making it well known that things like pet classes would be held back until vinyl was integrated, right? I think everyone can recite that, at this point, right? The
For sure,
Ranger,
yeah.
Druid, and Summoner, can't get until yeah. But
it's totally true.
I don't think they made such like a strong point for these other features, right? I believe some of them were mentioned as a kind of tertiary thing, in the past, but I do see it already kind of bothering some folks that feel like, with every milestone comes a new milestone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have like a big spiel about it other than just, this is game development and there is always something to do next. And we'll see that all the way up to launch. And then we probably won't see it as much post-launch because development probably won't be so open, but it will still exist. And so on one hand, that's just how it is. On the other, I do want to sympathize a bit with people that are probably feeling surprised, I guess, that these things didn't just kind of happen,
pop into
like,
place.
just,
Once it was done, they didn't just like suddenly exist. Like these were tasks the things were dependent on the network implementation. That doesn't mean there isn't still work to do to actually implement them. Like they still have to be
right. It's like
addressed.
The game is networked. It's just these other extra things that, I mean, were totally slated to get done after vinyl was integrated, or they still have to get done.
Yeah.
So it's just we're out of. I would say it seems like we're out of the heads down thing, though. At least that's kind of the indicator, which is the exciting thing, right?
Yeah, that's how I'm seeing it, and I'm sure Kyle's probably like, coming out of a dark room somewhere where he's been, secluded for 3 months and living on Mountain Dew and Cheetos or something, and he's all just pasty and his eyes are huge and dilated pupils and just I'm done, like ready to be moving on to whatever the next task is, because it sounds like it was quite the undertaking. And I think that's a good point you make about how it's like a cascading thing, right? It's like development cascades one thing into the next thing. And some of these like the cross zone communication and group persistence thing, I don't know if they've mentioned that specifically, at least I don't recall it, but it makes sense when you're looking at now we've got this ability to I don't want to get into the technical details because I'll screw it up.
I'm trying to like withhold, all these little differentiators, between the whole terrain and asset streaming and zoneless borders. And like, it doesn't matter. It's just
right.
The game's networked so they can do cool things like the demos we saw in the dev stream, which was awesome. And I'm really hoping to see, even more of those now that they have a fully functional networked game they can do stuff with. And then all these other things will just kind of fall into place as we go. But I was just going to add in, like, the only thing on this list that from a technical standpoint that makes, sense is group persistence across zones. Because, that might be something that they needed to do. They definitely needed to do that. So yes.
I'm glad to hear that that's on the list to get done. So
I am too.
It's exciting.
I think to go on the list and actually like go to the first question, you asked.
Mhm.
Like the quick kind of off the cuff things I would say, a fly through multiple zones is definitely on my wish list. Like if they
Yes.
went from, Throne Fast all the way through Avendir's Pass, maybe even further.
Even down to Wild's End, maybe.
Maybe.
And to see it with no loading screens, right? To see it with no
Yep.
zone lines. I mean, because that is what we're talking about.
Yep, that would be exciting. I personally would love to see like a stress test demo where they spawn in like hundreds of entities, like hundreds of bears, and just show off that their system can handle it. Same with like the pathfinding, like they mentioned.
Yep.
If their NPCs can like do some really complex pathfinding, that would be really impressive. And like doing like a multiple group raid, I think that's going to be a really exciting one for a lot of people to see. 4 groups or so just attacking something, even if it's not like a full encounter, right?
Yes. Yes.
The only thing with all that though that I would probably point out is that I would rather than put more time into development than like whipping up demos, right? I think what we have right now is a lot of stuff that like Minus can do, Ronick can do, and they can all just like basically play the game, and one of them just captures footage and it's fine. But if like Kyle has to take his time to like set up a demo for people, whatever, like let's just move on. We don't need that demo, right? Just build the game.
Yeah.
So this is a wish list,
That's
but it's
true.
like also kind of like whatever.
Yeah, that's something I've always sort of said is that, MMOs are hard to demo, because the essence of the MMO is massively amounts of people doing big things, right? And doing them, in a interdependent kind of way. And I just think those are really hard to demonstrate. And what this networking solution really allows for is that massively part of the MMO,
Yeah.
right? And so, how do they do that? Do they bring the entire team on to simulate a raid? But then again, it's still not really much of a demo because it's internal. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Not to mention they
yeah.
barely have like enough people for a raid.
Yeah, hey,
Isn't
you know
that
what they should
crazy?
do? I just had a really good idea. You know what they should do? They should bring us in to try this
Oh,
out and
wow.
help demonstrate it.
I never would
Yeah.
have expected that this would have come
No.
up. Who would have thought?
What
Well,
a what a crazy idea.
is there anything that like you would like to see though?
No, I think you really nailed it. I think back to that tech demo that Kyle did with the bouncing Tic Tacs,
Yep.
like I think even though that was a very, not, very technical demonstration, I got it after he explained it. I got
Yeah.
it and I understood more about what networking is all about and why it's important to a game like this. So I think the idea of that and then maybe putting a layer on top of it now is probably just off the top of my head where I would go with this because I think it did bring in the sort of the Luddites when it comes to this stuff like me, to help better understand
Instead
this
of a
thing.
bunch of pillboxes, it's just a bunch of bears,
Yeah.
just a sea of bears. And
I want to go with Greybox the raccoon. I feel like Greybox the
yeah.
raccoon needs more attention.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
plus it's smaller. Maybe it takes up less frames. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, let's move on because there was another cool piece of information they talked about in the newsletter. It's basically on the business end of things. They talked about hiring an additional 3D environmental artist. So that's cool. We're seeing this trend of steady growth. If you're looking at it from a corporate perspective, with regards to VR as a company. I talked a little while ago, Desiree, about reading one of Jason Schreier's books, Press Reset, and the one before it. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head now, but basically it details a lot of these companies that get way too big, way too fast, right? And then the things that come along with that. And I was talking to somebody else the other day, and they were saying like, VR would never choose to be a small company, and I'm like, I kind of disagree with that. Like, I kind of think like this kind of slow growth is a good thing. You don't want to get too big too fast, and it creates all these sort of peripheral issues around being a company just outside of developing a game. So I think that there's a lot of industry experience and wisdom that's involved in this managing their growth. So it's kind of a balancing act. I don't know if you feel differently about that.
No, I feel the same, man. I mean, like this last round of hires was like the biggest like kind of burst we've seen in a long time, and
Yeah.
I think that was great, but also over the longer term, we've kind of just had this nice steady trickle of people coming in ever since several years ago now. And I do like the idea of steady growth so much more. Like that, yeah, that could be its own tangent, but I really appreciate their way about things.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I could talk a long time about, all the ups
explosive
and downs and
growth and
and how it can screw things up. So I'm just glad to see that. And speaking of managing, the VIPs have been trying to manage a lack of testing sessions. Sounds like there's one on the horizon here. So yay. The newsletter said that they're currently targeting bringing players in to test system and network updates this summer. So if you're a VIP, expect an email over the coming weeks with more info. It's funny, Desmond, as soon as the newsletter came out, people start looking for what the definition of summer is, right? Well, what does summer mean? And we actually did this before. We went through this last year, I think, and I remember the same sort of process. What is summer? Well, technically it's the end of September is when summer is technically over. So who knows whether or not we'll be testing anytime before that. It's potentially yes, potentially no. Manage those expectations, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of laughing just because, we were kind of guessing for, when the next session was, and I think I was saying like June or July or something like that. But I'm cracking up because like even I was a little more optimistic. And I'm not disappointed or anything. Absolutely not. Like a lot of folks are already like joking that it'll be the literal last day of summer.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I could care less. I mean, the point I keep bringing up is that we're obviously we're itching to get in, but also it's especially exciting because at this point, if we're really thinking about it, it's going to be basically a brand new game, regardless. Like if we get in tomorrow, if we get in 3 months, it's going to be a whole new game. And I jokingly said, and I think it was our guild Discord, maybe P Plus, it's almost like a launch for the VIPs at least, because it's just such a big. So many things are swapped out and new, and so whenever it happens, it'll be epic. So I'm not in a rush, but it does crack me up that everyone's already trying to calculate, what this might mean. Doesn't matter.
I know, right?
Doesn't matter, guys. It'll happen. It'll happen when it happens. Yeah. But there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that's great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just that the fact that they talked about it and they, they're aware and it's coming, so we know it's on the way. And I'm content with that for now. So summer's here. The weather's nice. Enjoy it outside while you can. And then we can all become hermits for however long they give us to test.
That's right.
And shut out sunlight and all family and personal relations for 30 hours or whatever it ends up being. So. Those are the main observations that I wanted to make from the newsletter, Des, but I know you've got lots of ponderings, as I'm sure you always do. What from the newsletter stuck out for you?
Well, I don't think I'm going to go like last week and go like full dive into my notes, right?
Okay.
But I do want to bring up a few kind of general things just for folks to sit on because, naturally, I think you should all just go read the newsletter anyway. For all the details, because it's a good newsletter. I mean, like
it is.
I don't even know if I've said that yet, but it was a good newsletter, and it was almost like a very normal newsletter. Oddly enough, I was really excited for it, and then I read it, and I wasn't not excited, but I was just like, yeah, that was good.
I actually was like, I was on stream like guaranteeing it would be a good newsletter. Based on other information that I knew ahead of time, but we'll get to that. But I feel like I have been vindicated and validated by the fact that it was a decent newsletter overall.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a few things though. The first one is they're moving their focus from Wild's End to Thronefast and Avenir's Pass. I don't want to say it sounds like Thronefast and AVP are going to be the new Fairthale. But it's kind of feeling like that, right? Like, it seems like they're focusing on Thronefast, Avenir's Pass for this next bit of testing, at least. And I also kind of love that they said they're working on a lot. Like, the terminology they used was content pockets within those areas, right? And even narrative offerings. So, there.
Storylines.
Narrative.
I know, right?
Into PA.
It was It was, yeah, they talked a little bit about this in the last month too, and developing narratives in the Thronefest area and working on storylines and ooh, exciting. Can't
Yes.
wait.
Yes. Also, the human model updates. So I almost said repercussion, but the meaning I got from this is that they've actually got a workflow now for these updates, and
Mhm.
and that includes rigging for equipment. Which, if you have noticed, like the rigging or the equipment worn by other races, they need to finish all the races, to get everyone
Yeah.
able to be able to equip stuff and everything to look good on the different races. And so super hoping these updates roll out pretty quick, and then we get to kind of see, like, if we actually get to see some of the new races, or the
Yeah.
updated races, but also in armor. Oh, that's gonna just be so refreshing, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed it, and maybe I'm just seeing things, but there were some screenshots that came in this newsletter, and one of them was Black Rose Keep,
Yep, I
right?
know the
You
one
know,
you're
the guy
talking about
sitting
already.
around
Yeah.
the bonfire.
Yep.
And the human character in that screenshot to me looked different than the human characters we've seen before. I mean, maybe it was just it had like a beard, and maybe I'm just seeing things that aren't there. But to me, that looked like an improved human model. But I could be totally wrong about that. But
See, I saw
if
that model, and I think I know why you think it's improved. It's because he's got the same goatee as you.
it's actually me. It's
Yeah,
actually me. I
they
was
modeled the
standing by the
human after
bonfire.
you.
Oh, nice. I'm in the game. If it's in the game, it's in the game.
Well,
Sweet.
apparently you're part of the Black Rose, so I mean, depends.
Whatever, man. I'll do whatever I have to get in there. That's fine.
Imani Karos' sidekick.
Ooh,
Um,
don't get me started.
sorry, I lured a bit there. Whoops.
Yeah, you started going down the lore path there, but let's put the
Okay.
brakes
The,
on.
the last thing, real quick. I gotta call this out again. They're doing mountain updates. And they put specifically pointed this out, and they're talking about gameplay areas within the mountains as well. So I think this is specifically talking about not only updating the model or the terrain for the mountains and the stuff they talked about in the dev stream, but it sounds like they are planning on having actual points of interest in between the zones we know of, right?
Yes. One of the so remember from the stream last month when JN did the lore piece about the area around Thronefest, the Forlin, he said there was a quarry to the north. One of the pieces that was talked about, that was basically the source of a lot of wealth in the area. It's what led this Avelia to become a prosperous city. And I was thinking about that when I was reading this newsletter, because it was sort of like, sort of felt connected, detailing a quarry, and now they're talking about mountain areas and some gameplay areas within, and maybe points of interest, like you say, within the mountain region. I think that is pretty cool. And it also made me think of Data Ascent, right? Because they showed that it's basically, it was basically a temple on top of a mountain. So yeah, I think that this sort of interstitial area that they're putting some time in and working on is a cool thing.
That's a good word there.
Yeah, it's a good word. I can't deny that I'm impressed with myself for using interstitial.
well, so the last thing that I'll point out, we probably don't have time for this, but they did a whole feature on like the Pantheon dungeon experience, which I was expecting a class thing, but I kind of understand. Like, we just did the monk, and I was actually a bit refreshed by this kind of update on Pantheon dungeons. And I don't know, maybe we can't do this today, but something for another time. Like, we could go.
Yes. 100%. I actually wanted to, and then I thought, there's a lot here that I want to talk about.
I have more notes for that section than I do for like the producer's letter.
So we'll circle back to that maybe next week and do a bit of a dive into the dungeons of Pantheon, because they sort of refreshed a lot of philosophies that we all like, and they there was some stuff, there was some gold to be mined there. So yeah, so that's good stuff. So that's our recap of the newsletter for the week. And like it does, and like you said, go read it for yourself. Lots of good stuff there. Let's talk about what's coming up this week on Pantheon Plus for our content schedule. You'll see it on the screen right now. So of course, Mondays midnight Norath After Dark is Drac and his crew streaming some EverQuest on Thornblade server. Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, I've got a video coming out on updates to the perception system called So You Want to Be a Keeper. And I really enjoyed digging into this. It was something that we didn't cover here on the Rewind. We didn't talk about it because we had other stuff to talk about. So I felt like it needed to be broken down, and there was tons of information that Tehom gave. So if you're into, well, I mean, whatever, if you're into Pantheon, you're going to want to check this one out. Like I said, Tuesday, June 21st at 9 o'clock in the morning. Make sure you've got your notifications turned on so you can watch it and enjoy it. And of course, Tuesday evening, we're streaming, like I said in the intro, EverQuest. We are on the Jelinek server for this one. And we are going to be headed to Unrest as we gaining level 12 to take on Unrest and all the fun that goes on there. That's Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern on our Twitch channel. Wednesday, Sparrow's streaming Elder Scrolls Online on her Twitch channel, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thursday, RedbeardFlynn has a 6-month recap of Pantheon's development going up on his YouTube channel. Should be up at around 9 o'clock in the morning, and that'll be good as always from him. Friday, Sparrow's got a special stream doing, I think they're doing P99, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's basically Bounty Code's birthday. Bounty Code is her husband, in case you didn't know. And it's called the Neckbeard stream because he's old like us. And the Neckbeard celebration is in full commencement.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I'm going to definitely be there
Oh
to check it out.
yeah, me too. This is going to be so fun. I'm going to laugh a lot.
Yeah. Totally. So that's Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Sparrow's Twitch channel. Saturday, Nathan NAPALM is back with episode, what'll be 4 now of Cringe Pony TV. That's always fun. And that's the news and notes for this week with PantheonPlus, and it's also the VR news and notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right, I think we're going to mix it up today and go just totally off topic. I mean, we were talking about the newsletter and all those things, but also actually instead of the forums, you guys probably noticed, like I almost exclusively get forum threads because I like showing love to that format. But this time we're going to peek into Twitterland for just some responses to a prompt that the official Pantheon account posted a while back. The question goes like this. Does server loyalty link with game loyalty? And how quickly would you up and leave a server you've spent years on for a higher population, different rule set, or for a number of other reasons?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. Totally out of left field. I feel like even though, we talk about reputation and community, like obviously those are big parts of Pantheon, but we don't really talk about that kind of server identity as much. And even though this was kind of, for the record, this wasn't this last week that this was posted. So I'm a bit late, but I couldn't help but snag this just to kind of like, I don't know, get something fresh. Because recently I've been playing EQ2, oddly, because they have this new Varsoon server, and this question kind of made me consider, because my main characters that have always been on Antonia Bale, except for like when joining kind of different groups that come back to play for a bit. Like once I went on Skyfire with the guild, and now on Varsoon, because it's not just the guild, it's a lot of people from Pantheon community, and so well, I kind of would have thought myself really like loyal to my main server. I guess I'll just go like myself first. But I think my tipping point, man, is when I don't think of the community when I think of the server anymore. I don't really know anyone that actively plays on Antonia Bale, really. Actually, I did just find out about 2 of them, but it's still a popular server, but I don't really have those ties to it anymore because I don't know anyone, and I don't even know how to play my characters anymore. And so, but like I try to think, with Pantheon, I'd like to think that I'm just going to pick a server, I'm going to stick with it forever. But I kind of have to wonder, like, what would cause me to switch?
Yeah.
So yeah. What about you? What ties you to a server and would get you to switch?
Yeah, I don't know. So I remember, my EverQuest server was ECI back in the day, and the thing about when I think back to what I feel, about being on that server. I did feel like there was a sense of connection, community to it, because it was somewhere like when you join a server, you get sort of ingrained with the people that are there, and everybody sort of accepts, like, we're not the most populous server, we're not the role play server, but what are we? Every server kind of develops their own identity, right? So, what made ECI unique? I don't remember now, but I do remember at the time feeling like we had an identity. So, I feel like I do have a connection to it. Yeah, but I think we've kind of gotten to the place where it's like everything in the world. It's like we're much more globalized. Like we're much more citizens of the game rather than a server these days. I don't know if there is server loyalty anymore, honestly. I kind of wonder, because, and I also think people are generally concerned with servers being merged all the time, so they're hesitant to really be too to dive in too much in it, because they're like, and the reality is, if the population gets too low, they what are they going to do? They have to do something about it. So you're like, I don't want to identify myself on, let's say I'm on social media or something, like I'm Theric of ECI, like that could change, yeah, I think, and especially it's tricky because if there's different rule sets, if it's just a name, that's one thing. But when you're talking about changes in rule sets, that you're much more connected to. Nobody on an RP server, like you're saying with Antonia Bale, right? Which is an RP.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And it was like the RP server. Yeah. And it was also at the top of the list. So like,
yeah, it was the first on the alphabetical list. But if you took people from that server and placed them on a non-RP server, I think there would be quite the revolt. Like, you can't change the rule sets on somebody. Yeah. I don't know. It's sort of tough, because on one hand, I feel like it's good for people to be like, feel like a team, like I'm connected to a sports team, the team I grew up with. I love my team, and they're whatever it is, even though they're basically like, there's a history to my team, but also they're the same. They play by the same rules as every other team. There's not really that much difference between, on a functional level in terms of what they are. So, but I feel it's good to be part of that. So I like that mentality. But on the other hand, I also think that there's just sort of this homogenization of people. It's more about the game than the server.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. You brought up a lot of things that are going to come up with these responses a lot. Like a server actually having an identity, like we are the blank server, in spite of, all having the same rule set. We'll dig into a lot of this. So let's just get right into the responses. And again, these are from Twitter. I just pulled some responses, but there's a lot more. The first one I'm going to grab is from Angus, and that is, apart from friends and guildies, it depends how interconnected I am with the rest of the server population. I recall EQ Zegany back in 99, and I know heaps of characters just through passing travels and trades, and for that, I stayed. So just seeing similar names, I feel like that's actually really powerful. At least when I was playing actively, seeing the same people on Antonia Bale or, other games.
What it makes me think of is people who are like prolific sellers, like the people who are always selling stuff. Those names, and you see like, this person's selling something in global chat or whatever, however it worked for whatever game you were playing. But the people who are like the hardcore merchants, you kind of like associated them with that server,
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm thinking in my AB days, Antonio Bale, there was some server drama, and admittedly, I kind of feel nostalgic for it a little bit.
Yes, I know. Well, server drama, that's a great point, man. Like we say we don't like drama. Everybody says, oh, drama this, drama that, but it's kind of entertaining too,
Totally.
Like on your server, if things are going down on your server, it's kind of cool, like,
especially because you might LFG and find, actually meet these people. It's not like you go to the games with like world servers and you talk to someone in zone chat and then you're never going to see them again. Like,
yeah, it's like as much as I don't like a certain flavor of ice cream, I'll like any flavor better than plain. You know what I mean?
True,
Like,
true. Oh my gosh.
Like we like licorice ice cream, which I hate licorice, but if it's I'd
Still ice
still eat
cream.
it over plain ice cream because it's it's just not
Uh,
it's not ice cream.
as long as you don't consider vanilla ice cream plain ice cream, that's okay. Because
No,
vanilla is amazing.
no. Vanilla's fine. I got no problem with vanilla.
Anyway,
Don't be slagging on the vanilla.
exactly.
Here.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. So we've got Jared Woodhouse here, and this is you'll see this as a theme, but this is yes. When I started on EQ, I loved my server. It felt like a part of what defined my avatars. When the devs did the server merge, I kind of lost a bit of their soul. I feel that's when my decline for playing started. So they're saying like the server merge kind of took away whatever was like instilled in their characters, their avatars, as part of their identity.
You know what they should do is when they do server merges, they should make the server you come from part of your character's name or give you a title.
Oh,
You know, so it could be, Jared Woodhouse of ECI or whatever server they came from becomes a part of their character in some way.
so funny about that because they actually did this for EQ2, where you could get a title for if you had the same account, of course, for if you had played EQ1 or
that's right,
or
right.
even
Totally
better, because they actually ended up putting in the EverQuest Online Adventures servers as well as options. And so on most of my characters, I actually walked around with, of Farron's Hope, in hopes that I would, meet another EQOA player. And I met a few never on that same server. That's why I say like apparently Farron's Hope everyone was on Castle Lightwolf, apparently. But yeah, it was a really cool little nod that was, I felt like I had an identity, even though I only played EQOA for like a relatively short time. I still had that sense. Cool. Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, if they merged Antonia Bale with like, whatever other server, I would have felt like, oh, our drama is so totally like theirs now, right?
Well, or the thing they could do is they could make, each server, like they could like, separate them into make like tribes or something like that and start like drama between the server camps, that would be kind of fun.
Oh man. Well, dude, let's see. So let's get to this one. This is actually 2 responses, from, they go by, Kate on Twitter. And this says, if my friends move server, I would too. Why wait until your server is merged with another if the population decreases? Friendship is special and more important than a server name, in my opinion. So this is kind of speaking to just literally like kind of following, your friends around. And this whole idea of like population decreasing, causing server merges. It's pretty repetitive in this. Like you said, I think this is a very prevalent thing on people's mind is like, oh, why get hooked to your server? It's just going to get merged, a couple months after release anyway, right? But I totally get this, like following people around. I mean, like I mentioned, I did it twice now, so.
Yeah, well, and this just happened not that long ago when we were playing New World, because, what happened with we had a guild that was being formed by some other folks, and everybody wanted, and the idea was go on this one server, but then it turned out that nobody could get on that server, so
and then half of us,
into the other server, right? And it ended up being a real sort of a detriment to the cohesion of this guild because there was half on one server and half on the other, and then it was a sort of a pain that they had to wait for Amazon to sort of do their merges, and all the things had to happen for us to get back together as a guild. So I just think that's a good example of why your loyalty goes to the people you're with as more than the name of the server. But
that is actually a great example. I don't know why I didn't bring it up, but yeah, that was a real situation for sure.
New World trauma.
Well, and then let's kind of go beyond that because, it's one thing for a server to get merged or population to decrease. It would cause you to change servers or merge with a server. But what about game loyalty? And so Kate's second response here is, if my friends left the game, but I loved the game, I would still play and hopefully just make new pals on the same server, which I'm trying to think, if I really enjoyed a game so much so that I would rather just stay if, some the people I knew left, that inevitably makes you make connections with that server, I guess, right? Because
I think so. I think that this is the hope that the game is so engaging that even if like MMOs, rely on population, and they do rely on your, when it's sort of like, lemmings over the waterfall sometimes, when one goes, they all start to go, unfortunately. But if your game is made in such a way that it promotes and facilitates making new friendships, then you can avoid that, right? But games don't do that these days. A lot of MMOs don't do that. They just rely on the game itself being enough to stick around.
Yeah.
And it just never is.
Yeah.
It never is, because single player MMOs or single player games do it better anyway. So
that was a great Freudian slip right there, by the way.
It totally was. But like, yeah, you got to really strengthen the social aspect of your game if you want to avoid this pitfall.
Absolutely. And we've got Bitter Klinger here saying, game loyalty? I don't know what that means. I enjoy low population servers as much as I do high population servers for different reasons. But if population rose or dropped to the point that just broke the game mechanics, I would find a different game to play. So this, I think, is speaking to, stuff like New World, right? Where the game doesn't work if like in both directions. Like when the server was crazy, it was bad. When the server was dead, it was bad. So
everything's a problem at that point.
Yeah. But
everything's a problem.
I did pull this because I thought it was interesting to bring the idea of the game just not working, like mechanically speaking, which I'm trying to think if we have anything like that in Pantheon that would just make it mechanically not work,
Well, I mean, I think this is really the big question, and this is what a lot of modern MMOs do, because they worry that when the server population gets too low, their game mechanically won't work. So they basically do things like mercenaries. They do things like, ways to circumvent the need for a high population in some ways. And I think Pantheon is like, this is really a fundamental question for Pantheon, is that being a group centric MMO, can it survive a low population? Can it weather the storm of ups and downs in population? And I don't know, like I want to believe that it can, and I want to believe that the failure of other group centric MMOs in the past has been for other reasons outside this. But there's part of my brain that has that does say, yeah, I mean, sometimes when you build your game to be group centric and then you don't have groups, it's broken fundamentally.
Yeah. And I think that is the point where I would say I would rather have servers merge than introduce mechanics that devalue the interactions. Because you're right. If there is something that Pantheon needs to survive, like on a server, it is that you can find other people. And I think they have an idea that I don't think we're going to see like mercenaries or anything like that in Pantheon, because I think they know that once they start doing that, it actually takes away the thing that makes the whole game tick, right? So, but this is definitely where I would be like, oh yeah, merge us, please.
Yeah. You gotta, sometimes you gotta take a bitter pill for the greater good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We just got a couple more here. So let's get to Massak, who says, to the original question, depends. There are a few very specific things that could make me leave a server for another one. In parentheses, a roleplay rule set when one didn't previously exist is a good example. But for the most part, unless a server is a dumpster fire, I'm sticking with the one I started on. Introducing the rule sets thing, and I think I totally get this. It would be hard for me to not go to a RP server if one like didn't exist and then did, right?
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying you would be really tempted to go. You would switch servers if a new rule set came along that you were really interested in?
I would try to drag everyone I know. but yeah, that part is kind of important to me because it's already somewhat difficult to get like RP communities together. And so you really need that tag on the server to funnel everyone together. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I think Pantheon's going to launch with the RP server, so this might be a moot point. But speaking to like several folks actually in the thread said that if certain rule sets did open up, they'd probably switch. Like a PvP server,
Really,
is probably the best example, or like a PvP server with a certain rule set, or a server that had like a cool like twist to the rules that you like, just way better than the vanilla game. So I guess there is some pull from mechanics, or at least some pull of, hey, I'm more likely to find like-minded people here.
that's really interesting. See, I would have thought, I would have thought for sure that they wouldn't. I don't know. For some reason, to me, it's like no matter how tempting the new rule set may be to you, you're more invested in what the server you're on, in terms of the community, in terms of just your reputation and everything like that. But I guess that doesn't mean as much if it's a rule set that you're really into. I think of like, if you're adding new servers, first of all, it's a good thing because it means your game's popular, and things are going well. So your population can probably withstand it. So it's not like it would be done, erratically or with ill regard for the population. But like, think about like EverQuest and that the rule set server. What's the one that has like the random loot?
Mischief,
yeah, and like something like that. Like, I don't know if that would cause people to switch. If they're, I don't know. Maybe it's like testing the health of their current servers to see if something like that would be tempting. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a little kind of like sunk cost, being like, oh man,
yes.
I there's this thing I really want to do, but I've already put so much into this. But yeah, it's kind of like there's a bit of a dichotomy between, people that are mechanically driven, for like, specific rule sets, I mean, and people that are just purely social driven. Those are probably the same people that would play literally any game as long as like they played it with friends. And that's totally okay. Yes. But yeah, very interesting.
That's a great point. Great point.
And this one, this is our last one, and it's just too wholesome for me not to not to pull.
We know how wholesome.
Oh yeah, it's so wholesome. And this one's from, I want to say, Renee Solana. And it says, back when we played EQ, my family members and I would sometimes create new characters on random servers, just for the novelty and the newness of it. Making a new character on a new server where you knew no one, for me, was like visiting another country alone.
Huh. That is pretty cool. I have never heard of anybody doing that just for that reason. That is ultra social and not something that you see every day. So
also a testimony that the servers actually felt different, though, too. I thought this was a great word picture for just how different the EQ servers like felt, the communities felt.
Because technically they're carbon copies, right? Like they're 100% carbon copies outside of the people who are there. So what if you could visit another town that was exactly a carbon copy of your town? It's just different people live there. Would that be interesting to you?
I mean, yeah, and that's kind of the whole point, right? Is there's so much impact that comes from the social side of whatever the game is. It actually made me think of New World again, because if you remember, I think one of the servers we got on was like somewhere on that the server, whatever the community site was that was trying to like help people find each other, had said that like, this is the server for, oh gosh, what was it? It was like not Spanish speaking, but it was like some other nationality that had just decided this is going to be the place that they all focus.
Right.
So yeah,
that does happen. Yeah, we've seen that in the past for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, but you mix that with because that's a part of our globalization, right? Is now everyone can find each other before they get in a server. But then the other side is what happens on the server over the span of its lifespan. Like you could totally go to a different server, feel totally different. Like you said, the auctions and drama. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you said New World, and it made me remember that there was another site that talked about which servers the streamers were playing on, right? The big ones that had the big followings or whatever, and people used that as a guide where they wanted to go, or maybe didn't want to go. Yeah, so it was both. Like it really is interesting because again, you talk about server identity and, oh, I'm on Asmongold's server, right? And whatever. On Ko's server is a kind of a cool thing to have you in your identity. If you like those things, or if you don't, you say I'm on the non-streamer server. It's kind of a cool identity.
Yep. Yeah. Overall, super awesome topic. Like I said, I'm super late to this, but we got the link in the show notes if you want to contribute to this and kind of revive this little Twitter thread, because it was fascinating to me, and I'm really glad we got to talk about it, man.
Yeah, me too, man. Good choice.
Cool. Well, that's going to be it for this week's community discussion. The Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. All right, Community Spotlight time. We've actually got I would say an official introduction from the Kyle Katarn, also known as Olsen105 on the forums. And Kyle's on our Discord server and shows up in chat.
And he sent in a voice message for episode 100.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I say official introduction. And this post is titled just Hail. And Kyle's saying that he's becoming more interested in Pantheon lately. And though they've kind of been around since the Kickstarter, like, we've heard this a lot, right? But, pretty straightforward introduction, like many. Kyle hopped on the EQ bandwagon and has kind of been chasing the dragon, so to speak, ever since. And they're just looking forward to a group-centric, lore-heavy MMO, like many of us.
Awesome.
Yeah,
right on, Kyle. Well, welcome officially.
Yes, exactly. Official welcome, Kyle. And if you haven't already said hi to Kyle on the Discord or in chat or whatever, go say hi to, and again, it's Olsen105 on the forums. And yeah.
Nice.
Let's see. We've got some videos, as we would expect from this last absolute banger of a of a dev stream. We've got a good quick Baz flash called Pantheon Rise of the Fallen's Network Tech and New 3D Artist. That I think that was actually really recent. I think it was the newsletter, yeah.
I think.
So actually that one's for the newsletter, not the dev stream. My bad. But then we've got Mr. the Nathan NAPALM doing this would crack me up. I'm sorry, I'm gonna give you a little crap, Nathan. Pantheon MMO Big Alpha Update June 2022.
He just takes like hype words and strings them, mashes them into a sentence.
Well, it's full time now, so that means full clickbait. But no, great video. Like you said last time, I like the new format. It's really cool. And then our last video here is going to be RedbeardFlynn. And I'm so glad I caught this one. The title is literally just, does it matter?
Yep.
Have you seen this?
Yep. I did. And I noticed the title was weird too. Like, it's funny to see, the content creators that we know and are friends with, experimenting with different sort of techniques when it comes to like, how they label their content and how they put it into YouTube and stuff like that. So I was taken aback by just the plain title. Does it matter? There's no Pantheon in it. There's no like, it's funny how it's so plain it is.
Yes. Well, for those that haven't seen it yet, so the Does It Matter is actually referring to weather. If you didn't know, the Ashes team actually just showcased a whole like weather and seasonal thing. It's really impressive. And as many of you know, VR did a stream with some weather effects a while back. And while, theirs was very like kind of early, just, not as cohesive as what Ashes put out as their, big marketing stuff. But like Redbeard decides to kind of like not compare them, but translate what each has to offer into answering the question of whether matters. In MMOs, and it's just a really, really wholesome and fascinating watch. I very much enjoyed myself, and it was really fun watching Redbeard receive some. Let's say his wife had probably more fun with this one than he did.
Yeah, there was some water to the face and some leaves and twigs thrown in his general direction, with copious laughing by said thrower. So I really enjoyed it
Right.
too. I like watching him get abused by his content creator partner.
Well, yeah, super good job, Red. And that is actually going to be it for this week's Community Spotlight.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. So, in the lore segment this week, we are starting a new tale. And you know what? Some mysteries are best unknown. Those are the words that start the tale of Arakamel Dawn, an ogre direlord, the signature character in Pantheon. And as we'll learn, the name Dawn is actually a moniker applied by ogre society rather than his given true name. So what does Dawn mean? And why has Arakamel earned this title? If you listen along as I read the words of J.N. Gerhardt, Pantheon's lead writer, that should become clear in this week's Lore Tale. Terminus is a world of countless languages. For every one that finds common use, there are thousands that do not. Yet there are single words which may become universal, stepping beyond their native tongue and into the parlance of peoples living thousands of miles away. Words that find meaning beyond their definition, like a helm meant for battle that finds fashionable use in a noble's court. An ogre named Arakamel has carried the word Dawn to a place of notoriety in the darkest corners of the world, to the degree it is wrongly attributed as his surname. For while a hero is defined by what he has done, the outcast by what he's not, Arakamel is defined by the mystery of what he is and the fear of what he will become. The clan, the tome, the victor. Among the 7 ogre clans, this brief recitation is known as the 3 virtues, and it's said to hold the 3 chambers of the ogre heart. It is a stark but simple trinity, one that has passed the test of any good proverb, being less about words and more about meaning. And though these virtues are quite unlike the moral rivets of elf or dwarven culture, they are the timber beams that make the large and peculiar tent of ogre kind possible. The clan. For the tenuously unified clans of Broken Maw, the 3 virtues form a constellation of existence, a map that charts a course through life. Their gods, traditions, and even morality are spun around these 3 points, with the threads of reality woven carefully in between. And with every constellation, there is one star that shines the brightest, one that captivates the eye and whispers with its flicker. To similar effect, each clan has one virtue that sits higher than the rest. The devout Way of Aster prize their tome of war above all else, while the irreverent Fangoon celebrate familial bonding more than relics or battle. Yet in all cases, the clan is the anchor for each of the virtues, where an immortal tether connects with the all-too-mortal world. The tome. Since each of the tomes of war were taken and presumed lost by the Black Moon King over 700 years ago, it may seem that the clans who prize these artifacts are at a disadvantage. Yet, before he disappeared from Broken Maw, the king had much of the runic ciphers copied by scribes, and these copies he left behind. Even without translation, the indecipherable runes hold considerable power, as even transcribing them is a task deadly enough to separate impostor from master. With such a delicate task necessary to produce so little reward, few clans see their tome as a North Star. Yet, the Black Moon and Way of Aster are patient, or perhaps fanatical, enough to glean these divine inscriptions no matter the cost. The victor. Among the Dark Sun, victory has forever been paramount. On the ogre's former planet of Gorok, his bloodthirsty clan was only as strong as its ability to conquer and subdue. The victor was the Dark Sun lodestar, and the blade thrust into the neck of a foe was as much an expression of purpose as of power. Even their patron deity, Rathamel, tailored his followers to see themselves as instruments in his hands rather than independent beings of flesh and blood. Thus, when on Terminus, the Black Moon King buried their greatest warriors into the clay cliffs at the edge of the Whispering Lands, he crushed more than bones and bodies. If there were no Dark Sun warriors, what means of victory remained? If there was no means of victory, what was left of the clan? When the air settled and Rothic easily claimed the Tome of War, he shook the dust of their identity from his feet. And though that moment occurred well over half a millennium ago, observers of the Ogre clans remark that the Dark Sun had never fully recovered. And that is the lore you know. There you are, another episode of The Rewind is in the books. And as always, I want to thank you, Desrin, for all your hard work and keeping us connected to the community.
Woohoo! Thank you for actually putting all this together in the first place. You deserve. I know you thank me every time, but I'm always like, I just kind of tag along and talk, really. But
no, you're whatever, dude. Whatever, you can be humble and minimize it all you want, but we know what you do. I couldn't do this show without you, my friend, and I really appreciate it. So thanks again, and thanks to everyone for being a part of the Rewind in whatever capacity you choose to partake. Let's keep growing this Pantheon community strong. So, if you know someone who's looking for a new MMO to enjoy, or maybe they've heard about Pantheon and are just sort of coming around, I think there's some big things on the horizon. So, direct them to the newsletter, share this show with them, let them know about Pantheon and all that stuff. So, it's just a good way to grow the community. And, having said that, go check out the newsletter. Oh, and by the way, Community Spotlight. Until next time, cheers and thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the PantheonPlus Rewind. PantheonPlus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name PantheonPlus. You can follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.